COVID-19. The Native American Community Clinic is now administering the updated Pfizer bivalent booster. The updated bivalent booster helps protect against the original COVID-19 strain and against newer Omicron variants. And it will help restore protection that has decreased since previous vaccinations. People aged 12 and older are now recommended to get an updated bivalent booster dose at least 2 months after their last COVID-19 shot. That means the bivalent booster may be given after a person's primary series or after their last booster shot, regardless of what brand you received before. Even if you've already had COVID-19, you should get vaccinated. Right now, at the Native American Community Clinic, you can get COVID-19 vaccines, including updated boosters, at the same visit as other vaccines. However, if you've received a recent monkeypox vaccine, you may need to wait 4 weeks before you can get a COVID-19 vaccine, and you should discuss this with your provider. Schedule your vaccination appointment with the Native American Community Clinic by calling 612-872-8086.
Minnesota has the only original wolf population in the continental United States, and 80% of Minnesotans believe the wolf should be protected. Howling for Wolves is asking Minnesotans to respect our true wildlife manager, the wolf. Their survival is critical to our ecosystems, our communities, and even our economy. As highly intelligent animals with strong social bonds, Minnesota wolves deserve to be protected and admired. Learn more at howlingforwolves.org. Let's live and let howl.
The Native American Community Development Institutes Make Voting a Tradition is a culturally specific, year-round, multi-generational approach to increase voter turnout and civic engagement. The fundamental principle of MVAT is that Native Americans are more likely to become politically active when engaged by peers and family. MVAT has created partnerships with local, statewide, and national efforts to increase turnout in BIPOC and other traditionally low turnout groups. Go to NACDI.org, NACDI.org to learn more.
Hey, Ogimaa, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
With a look at your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick Lilia. Clear tonight with a low of 25, then sunshine Wednesday with a high of 49. Cafe Latte is unlike any restaurant you've ever experienced. Grab a tray and pick from their award-winning selections of soups, salads, sandwiches, and mouth-watering desserts. Cafe Latte, Victoria Street and Grand Avenue in St. Paul, or cafelatte.com.
Portions of Native Roots Radio may be pre-recorded.
It's a good day to be indigenous.
Get up, stand up.
They are going to become more brutal.
Couldn't cut, hitting cut again.
Because all the hippies were trying to be Indians anyway.
They're going to become more repressive because it's a matter of dollars and their illusionary concepts of power.
Hey, Victor.
We must live in balance with the earth.
And also with recent happenings at Wounded Knee.
I am awake.
Welcome to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Wakanja Hade.
Hi, Anim Bonjour, everybody. This is Native Roots Radio presents Rock the Vote Native Style, and I am one of your guest hosts today. I'm Ogimaa Ikwe. Normally, you'd hear me doing the news on Native Roots Radio, but today I have the pleasure of co-hosting with Miss Nancy Beaulieu, who works for MN350, Bemidji 350, and is an all-around awesome activist, water protector, voting rights and treaty rights activist, wonderful person. Nancy, welcome, and thanks so much for co-hosting with me tonight.
Bonjour, it's always a pleasure to be here, and I just want to say that we have two wonderful guests tonight. We have Jamie Becker-Finn, who is an incumbent for Minnesota House 40B. I hope I got that right. And she's also a Leech Lake band member. And then we have Emelie Rivera from the Bemidji City Council, Ward 4. She's also an incumbent seeking re-election, and she's a wonderful ally. But first and foremost, I want to talk about why voting matters, because there's a lot at stake, and a lot of people think that, well, we're not voting for president right now. It's not an important election, but there are a lot of things at stake, like women's right to abortions, the working families, we need to afford health care and child care and all those good things. And then We know some of the Republicans are after cutting Social Security and Medicare. So, these are issues actually that we're voting for, and we're actually defending democracy. So we really need to get out and vote, and it's really important. And people would, more often think that, well, we always vote and they never listen to us. But, we're hosting a wonderful, inspiring, empowering block party this weekend where we can teach our people how to be civically engaged in this political process after November 8th. And so we need to be a part of the dialogue and the decision making, but it's really up to us to make things happen. So this is why voting matters. And I'm going to state a few reasons why it's really important. One, especially, in your hometown, local races actually have more of a direct impact on our daily lives than the federal or the state elections. So keep that in mind. Like our guest tonight is a council member here in Bemidji, and she's an ally of our people. So it's important that we elevate candidates like her. So that's the second reason why we want to vote. We want to elevate candidates that align, with our values and who support our vision for the future. It's also our civic duty. Political participation is a key to a democratic system and one of our responsibilities as a citizen. So Saturday, when we're at the block party, we're going to teach people, how to show up after November 8th, because we think that's important, especially here in our hometowns, in our homelands, that we be a part of the policies and all the things that the city council is responsible for. We need to be in that dialogue. Voting produces change. And when more of us show up, things happen. And if we stay at home, crawl in our holes, and expect someone else to save the world, that's probably not going to happen. It's really up to us to be, what do they say, strength in numbers. So it's really important that our Native relatives and all of our allies really get out there and vote. And voting is also a collective statement in support of democracy. Exercising our right to vote is one of the most important ways that we, the people, will not, and I'm saying, I messed up, we will not relinquish that right to vote. So, and be heard. So I think it's important that we encourage each other, pick up our neighbors, our family, our friends, and say, hey, I want to help you. And if people are not sure how to make an informed vote, you can go to your state's Secretary of State website, and you can enter your address, and it'll give you a sample ballot of those candidates in your area. And you have just a little over 20 days, I think, Ogimaa, to do that research.
Yeah, so countdown to election day. The U.S. midterm elections are just 20 days away on November 8th, 2022. Counting down really, really quickly here. Another really great place that you can go to if you're kind of, new to this process or you're not sure where to start, anywhere in the country, you can go to nativesvote.org, and nativesvote.org will tell you where you can go, how to register, any deadlines and things that you might need. They have information for our relatives who are maybe coming off of, sometimes people end up with a felony charge and they're not allowed to vote for a certain amount of time. There's information on that, information on what type of ID to bring, all of that. Remember, a tribal ID is a valid form of identification when you go to vote. And, Nancy, why don't you just drop those details for this block party here in northern Minnesota? It's this Saturday. What's the date and time and location?
It is Saturday, October 22nd in Bemidji, Minnesota, on 1855 Treaty Land. And we are going to be hosting Get Out the Vote. Actually, we're going to rock the vote. And again, the goal is to not just get people to the polls, but we have to remind ourselves that treaties matter. Moving forward in the political world, we are talking treaties. We went to the Minnesota DFL State Convention, and we were really fortunate enough to get the treaty resolution passed in a DFL party. But I want everyone to remember that treaties are nonpartisan. So you can be a Republican, you can be a Democrat, you can be from the independent parties. We're all treaty people. And so this is why we extended our invite for the block party to the Republicans, because again, this is a nonpartisan event, and our goal is to show people that we are the power, and we want to remind the candidates that are in attendance that treaties matter and that we're going to move forward because we're working towards a transition to environmental and racial justice based on treaty obligations. And so I think the Block Party is going to be really inspiring. We got live music, we got big drums, we got fry bread and wild rice for the first 300 guests. We got door prizes, got Thomas X and Maria Isa. So we have 4 hours of nothing but building power. And I think when everyone leaves Saturday, they're going to feel like they have a place where they feel safe, a place where they're being heard, and most importantly, a place where we can define our purpose as constituents here in Beltrami County, and most importantly, defend our treaties. So I encourage, if you're in our area, join us on Saturday from 2 to 6 down at the Bemidji Lakefront.
Wonderful. So Nancy, we have just a couple of minutes left in the segment, about 2 minutes. Do you want to bring on your first guest and introduce her? And then we can chat with her a little bit more in the next section.
Sure. We got Emelie Rivera. She's the incumbent for the Bemidji City Council Ward 4. And I like that she wants to invest in community by promoting stewardship for the future, for our children and the environment. So welcome, Emelie.
Thank you so much. Are you able to hear me okay?
We are.
Okay, great.
Welcome, Emelie.
Yeah. And you know what? I just want to share a good note about Miss Emelie before we get started. It was we have this rental property in Bemidji that's kind of created some chaos and issues for some of our native population. And I remember about a month ago, maybe it could be wrong, Emelie, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I was really, really happy to see Emelie come and help make sure that the residents that were left behind had fire extinguishers and smoke alarms. So she comes with good intention.
Wonderful. So stay tuned here on Native Roots Radio presents Rock the Vote Native Style. We're here with Nancy Beaulieu from MN350 and Emelie Rivera, who's an incumbent candidate for the Bemidji City Council, Bemidji and Northern Minnesota City Council. She's got some great ideas, some great things that she's running on, and we're really excited to talk with her just a little bit more in the next segment. So stay tuned, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio presents Walk the Vote Native Style here on the Civic Media Network. We'll be right back.
We are your relatives.
We are your relations.
Brothers,
sisters,
sons,
daughters.
And some of us are your grandchildren.
We are your community. Historically, we held places of honor and respect. Because of the impact of colonization, some of us are rejected, thrown out from family, friends, and community, set up as targets for sexual violence, sex trafficked, humiliated, tortured, and murdered. Everybody has the right to be safe. We are your relatives. Remember,
homophobia is not traditional.
Sponsored by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
Hey, Ogimaa, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
Minnesota has the only original wolf population in the continental United States, and 80% of Minnesotans believe the wolf should be protected. Howling for Wolves is asking Minnesotans to respect our true wildlife manager, the wolf. Their survival is critical to our ecosystems, our communities, and even our economy. As highly intelligent animals with strong social bonds, Minnesota wolves deserve to be protected and admired. Learn more at howlingforwolves.org. Let's live and let howl.
Metro State University empowers students to expand their knowledge and advance their careers through high-quality bachelor's and master's programs in high-demand fields. Looking to complete a 4-year degree? Metro State has more than 60 undergraduate programs to choose from. Hoping to move into the next level of your career? Find out which of Metro State's 25-plus graduate programs is right for you. Visit metrostate.edu for upcoming info sessions and to apply. Spring registration is open now. Metro State University, where learning meets living.
This is Winona the Duke of Honor the Earth, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio. I'm awake.
Welcome back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and this is Robert Pilot.
Welcome back to Native Roots Radio. I'm Ogimaa, Giniw, Ikwe. Tonight, instead of Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, we have Native Roots Radio presents Rock the Vote Native Style. And I am co-hosting with our special guest host, Nancy Beaulieu, who is working on voting rights and treaty rights here in northern Minnesota. And Nancy Beaulieu has brought with her a wonderful guest tonight. We have Emelie Rivera, who is an incumbent running for Bemidji City Council in northern Minnesota. And Nancy, I think you've got some questions for Emelie tonight.
I do, but first and foremost, I just want to say, welcome again, Emelie, and you're a fine example of what a good treaty person looks like. And one reason why we have our allies on the show is because many of our Native voters don't understand, who to vote for, or most of the time it's just a career politician with a suit on and no face and a name on the ballot. But we brought you forth because we want people to know that we have wonderful allies like yourself. And I want you to share in our, maybe if you have a way that we can help support your campaign, share a little bit with your links or your Facebook page in the chat, and tell us quickly a little bit about your platform.
Oh, well, first of all, thank you, Miigwech, so much for allowing me to be here tonight. It's been an honor to be asked. A little bit about me. As you mentioned, I represent Ward 4 in the city of Bemidji, which is kind of a large expanse of the city, and it is an area that has just been near and dear to me because it's where I've lived most of my adult life, and it's a lot of the ward is wetland or has lake access, and so water quality issues, things like that are very important to me, and looking forward to how is this community going to be able to be sustained in the future. We're stewards of this community of the lake, the water quality, being the first city on the Mississippi. So we have, I think, a greater responsibility to our natural resources here as things move south. We really need to, in my mind, lead the way when it comes to issues like environmental justice, issues like water quality, other items, not necessarily platform, because as a city council, we need to be a team. And so, we all have our individual items that we're passionate about, but ultimately we are looking at issues that are related to, as you mentioned, just the daily lives of people here in the community, the water quality, the streets we drive on, all of the things that are our basic needs. And so just wanting to make sure that we are aware as we are making policy and decisions that we're considering all of our populations, not necessarily just the ones that are most often at the table, but those people that are just, as a social worker, I've worked with people who are just, doing their best to survive on a day-to-day basis, maintain their housing, keep the lights on, or survive without them on. And so how is our policy making impacting them? I know there's a lot of desire to maintain a tourism industry in Bemidji. There's a desire to see the community grow, but we are a pretty impoverished community. And so instead of maybe focusing on some of these bigger growth issues, I really want to keep focused on the people who are doing their best to just survive the day-to-day, and how do our policies impact them. So
right,
that's kind of where I'm coming from.
I think that's really important, Emelie, because we just talked about this the other day, how people are just surviving from day to day, and they can't think about tomorrow, and it makes it difficult for them to be a part of this process. So my question to you would be, how will you work to get more Native people involved in their neighborhood organizations, their community, and in the political process? Because, from my own personal experience, it's been a challenge to deal with a majority of the city council, not you, but others. And it makes it really hard for us to be engaged in that process when we're not being heard. And this is exactly one reason why we're having this block party is we want to show up, and we want to show up in a good way, but we want you all to listen. So how can you help that process?
Boy, that, that inclusivity is a piece to me that was really missing. That's why I ran for office the first time is that, I really didn't believe that the voices that were coming to the table were the voices that represented our larger community very well. And so outreaching different, not just different individuals, but organizations where people are and people gather to, ask that, because it's very overwhelming to join, even if it's just one of the city committees or commissions. It's hard to come in as somebody who's, not traditionally been treated with the best acceptance and open arms. And how do you build that trust? How do you create that connection that's meaningful enough to make people want to come back? It's not just getting them there, but it's getting them coming back and being a part of the processes all the way through, from the initial, idea conception all the way to the end point. And so, outreaching is one way, but really building on those relationships that exist to encourage the other existing systems and people such as yourself to help people feel comfortable. Because if the leaders that do this type of work, such as yourself, don't feel comfortable, how can you ensure that other people will feel safe and comfortable? And so we really need to make very deliberate steps in this community to honor our residents and the people whose lives we affect with our decisions. And we need to be seeking those actively, whether it's outreach in a individual way. I don't have the answer. I wish I did to make it all happen, but I really feel like we have such great diversity in this community that it's a shame that we are trying to shape and develop policy without actively seeking more community input, and then also seeking it in a meaningful way that people feel safe coming forward.
Right. I think
is really important.
That we have to focus on intention. That is something, that's rooted into our work as an individual. How do we be just a good person overall? And I think, not just voting for people like you, it's also, being part of that civic engagement piece. But I think what we really need to focus on, though, is really getting our neighbors and our friends and spreading the word that we do have allies and relatives that are running for office, because again, it's up to us to elevate candidates like you. And when we learn how to play this game and play it better, we can actually get more of our aligned candidates into these positions, and then we can have the majority vote. And then when we capture that majority vote, that's where we could see change. And I think that's why I like to really dig into this work and tell people we are that power, and it's really up to us to make people like yourself, show up in these kind of spaces. So I want you to tell us why we should support you, and what does that look like?
Well, that's a really great question, Nancy. Support for me is just trying to get the word out. Getting people to the polls on election day is really important. I'm very much doing this in the most simple fashion possible. Door knocking. I don't have any fancy shiny flyers or anything like that, because this type of office should be accessible. So all the clothes that people see me in when I go to a council meeting are thrift store clothes. All of the materials, I'm finding paper at rummage sales, so that I'm not, spending a lot of money doing this, because I want to be able to encourage people like, oh, I can't do that. Look, that person had to raise $30,000 to run for this office. And it doesn't have to be that way. You need passion. You need an interest in change. You need an interest in the community. And that's about it. The rest of it, you can find a way to make it happen. And so trying to show people that this type of office is accessible, I think is really important to me. And then encouraging people to start just getting involved in little ways, like showing up to your event or, just even just being interested enough to listen, I think is so important, because you couldn't have told me 10 years ago that I would be in this spot. You wouldn't have been able to convince me that this would happen, because it takes a commitment to personal growth for sure, but it turns introverts puts them into extrovert situations and things like that aren't necessarily comfortable. But that's what change is about, is not being comfortable, getting outside our comfort zone and just making that change happen.
All right, we got about just one more minute before we wrap this segment up with you. And Emelie, I want to give you a big shout out, to all of our relatives out there, that you are a wonderful ally. We're excited to have you down at the block party. So all you listeners out there, if you are close, please come and visit us on Saturday.
That would be great.
Hey, up next, we're going to have an interview with Robert Pilot and Heather Keeler. Stay tuned.
Be good.
Be good.
Hey, Wendy, what are we doing for dinner after the show?
How about we go to J. Selby's on 169 Victoria Street in St. Paul? They have a delicious plant-based menu that's compassionate and environmentally sustainable.
I'm getting their spot-on vegan Big Mac, the dirty secret.
You can pick up and they deliver within a 5-mile radius, or you can call them at 651-222-3263 or visit jselbys.com.
Well, you sold me, Wen. Let's go order at J. Selby's tonight.
I'm hungry.
Hey, it's Patrick. Football season is building up, and so is the nastiness in your carpets and air ducts. It's time to call Zero Res and beat the holiday rush. Every surface Zero Res does is specifically designed to preserve and maximize the life of your investments in your home. But also ask yourself before you turn on your furnace, do you know how much built-up dirt, dander, and other allergens are hiding in your air duct system? With Zero Res this month, the more you buy, the more you save. Get 3 rooms of carpet clean starting at just $139 or 5 rooms starting at $199. That's a 43% savings. Book now to get the best carpet cleaning deal of the season. And don't forget about your air ducts. Help your furnace perform its best this winter by removing all the nasty dirt, dander, and harmful debris from your HVAC system. Plus, Zero Res will give you $75 off any air duct cleaning package. Call 952-ZERO-RES or visit ZeroResMinnesota.com to schedule your appointment today.
As we head towards colder weather, it's important to make sure you're up to date on vaccinations and protected from COVID-19. The Native American Community Clinic is now administering the updated Pfizer bivalent booster. The updated bivalent booster helps protect against the original COVID-19 strain and against newer Omicron variants. And it will help restore protection that has decreased since previous vaccinations. People aged 12 and older are now recommended to get an updated bivalent booster dose at least 2 months after their last COVID-19 shot. That means the bivalent booster may be given after a person's primary series or after their last booster shot, regardless of what brand you received before. Even if you've already had COVID-19, you should get vaccinated. Right now, at the Native American Community Clinic, you can get COVID-19 vaccines, including updated boosters, at the same visit as other vaccines. However, if you've received a recent monkeypox vaccine, you may need to wait 4 weeks before you can get a COVID-19 vaccine, and you should discuss this with your provider. Schedule your vaccination appointment with the Native American Community Clinic by calling 612-872-8086.
Hello, Minnesota. This is Tom Hartman, and you can catch me every weekday from 11 to 2 right here on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. It's smart radio for smart people.
Hi, this is Chad from AM 950. Snap Construction is arguably the most well-reviewed roofing, siding, window, and insulation contractor in the metro. Ryan is so excited about working with AM 950 and our listeners that he wants to help us grow.
This is Ryan, owner of Snap Construction. I was friends with Chad long before I started marketing with him. I was a bit skeptical of radio advertising before Chad convinced us to run ads. The advertising's been so successful, we want to help the station grow. We've absolutely loved working with the listeners of AM 950, and we all know how extremely important this radio station is to the community. To help AM 950 grow, Snap Construction will be putting up proceeds to assist the station in marketing on social media. Snap Construction encourages you to follow, engage, share, and interact on the AM 950 social media platforms. Together, we can all work to ensure AM 950 continues to thrive and grow in our communities. We stand by our work with a lifetime craftsmanship guarantee. For a free estimate or more information on our financing, call 612-333-SNAP or check us out online.
With a look at your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick. Clearly clear tonight with a low of 25, then sunshine Wednesday with a high of 49. Cafe Latte is unlike any restaurant you've ever experienced. Grab a tray and pick from their award-winning selections of soups, salads, sandwiches, and mouth-watering desserts. Cafe Latte, Victoria Street and Grand Avenue in St. Paul, or cafelatte.com.
Beaulieu. I am Oshawashko Gijig. I'm from Red Lake Nation, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio.
Welcome back to Native Roots Radio Presents I'm Away.
Welcome back to Native Roots Radio Presents Rock the Vote Native Style. I'm Ogimaa Giniw Ikwe, standing in for Robert Pilot, but we do get to have him in spirit here this evening. Robert was able to have a quick interview with Representative Heather Keeler from District 4A, I believe. I think that's still it after redistricting. So I'm just going to go ahead and play that interview for you all now. Welcome.
This is Winona LaDuke of Honor the Earth, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio. I'm awake.
Hey, welcome back to Native Roots.
I don't know.
Right. So, I mean, I see you're not only campaigning, but you're reaching out to Indian country and doing things for your community. Can you tell us a little bit what you've been doing the last couple weeks?
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? Because I am technically still a state representative, even though we're right in the middle of campaigning. One of the things that's really hard is as state representatives in the state of Minnesota is we're up for re-election every 2 years, which kind of feels like, in a sense, we're always in campaign mode. But then also in this time, when we're 20 days out or even 2 months out from election, people kind of stop doing the actual work. And I actually really love the work. That's what I am elected to do. And so I went out and did official visits up in Red Lake, in Leech Lake, and in White Earth a couple weeks ago, visiting, like spending whole entire days in their communities, getting tours of their community projects that they're doing, meeting with their tribal council, but also spending time in all of their tribal colleges, learning what their students need. Again, higher education is a thing I'm super passionate about. But it's been really interesting to go out and sit and listen to our tribes and our leaders, because, it's funny, Robert, because when I started to reach out to say, hey, can I come out and spend some time with you and learn what your issues are and learn how we can work together? The original response, they were kind of caught off guard, like, what, you want to come and like spend time with us for more than an hour? And I'm like, yeah, take me to all your cool places. What projects do you have that are thriving? What are things we need to invest in? What are things that we've totally missed from a state perspective? Because again, back to that liaison, mind frame is that I'm here to listen to the communities and help them learn, and support the changes that we need to make. And so, Ikwe compliance comes to the top of our minds a lot. Obviously, like, protecting our sovereignty is where it's really at, and honoring our treaties and making sure that we have people in decision-making seats that really deeply understand the rooted history in that. But, Ikwe, once again, they're coming after our kids through a systematic genocide. Minnesota is #1 in the nation for removal of Native American children by 17 it's 17 to 1. 17 Native American children to every one white child is removed in the state of Minnesota, which is just extremely unacceptable to me. And we heard that loud and clear from our tribal nations, and we will be addressing, the compliance issues that we have with DHS. And I'm kind of sensing that all of us are over, well, we need to do better. Well, we're sorry we didn't do that. Like, you're messing with our kids for too many generations. And we're just absolutely putting our foot down in that space for sure.
Yeah, it's coming around, and I think we haven't even talked about the national politics of Roe versus Wade, but they have the Republicans have told us what they're going to do, and gay marriage is on the chopping block. I mean, again, this is the most important. I think there should be no off-year election. This every year is important, and Democrats need to know that, and we outnumber them. I heard we outnumber them 3-1. And we just got to ignite our base. And that's why having you on and speaking your truth is so powerful, because you're in the trenches. And they've told us what they're going to do. So we need to get out the vote.
Right. And I think too, like, it's important to challenge the party that we're a part of. Yeah, I have a D behind my name. I'm a Democrat, as it says on the ticket. But to be really truthful, I'm unapologetically Indigenous first in every space that I'm in. And, I would flat out say that our Democratic Party doesn't do a great job at supporting and deeply understanding, our tribal nations and advocating for them in a way that I believe that we have to. And so I like to be the thorn kind of in the space that continues to challenge us in those areas, because again, representation matters. And if I'm the only one at the table at the time, I'm going to have to find the courage to have the voice to say, we're not doing right by our tribal nations. And we have codified tribal consultations that we're supposed to be having these relationships with our tribal nations. And I'm just kind of sick of the lip service that we keep doing. And I'm really here to hold our own party accountable to our tribes as well. And that's part of why, we're working with community leaders and elders to put on events up in our tribal nations, like we are up in Red Lake on Friday, the 21st. Just to engage our communities so that they know how to uplift their voice and know that they're deeply respected in this work, at least for some of us. And yeah, that's the best that I guess we can continue to do, right? We have to challenge our own selves sometimes. My dad used to always say, you can point the finger at everybody else. The only person you can change is yourself. And I think that as a party, we can point the finger in other spaces, but really, you're only best when you challenge yourself and grow in the most best ways.
Well, I always told students that when you're pointing a finger, you're pointing 3 back at yourself. So, but
Yeah.
I got to just say this: you may be a thorn in the side of some people, but I know people come up to me randomly, probably because they know we know each other from the radio show and we're both native. Like Howard came up to me. I've told you this a couple of years ago, and just said Heather is knocking the ball out of the ballpark, and I didn't even ask him like, "How's Heather doing?" No, he just came up and told me that. So the doers know what you're doing, and the people that aren't or don't.
I think that there's what I've learned in my first 2 years is there's self-sacrificing and self-serving legislators. And there's some of us that really go to bat. It's hard to be really humble in our teachings, but also I think it's important to recognize the amount of work that goes into what it means to be a greater Minnesota member. I drive 3.5 hours one way in crazy weather to get to my job to do this work. I stay and work massive amounts of hours, both when I'm in St. Paul and when I'm back in my communities and out in tribal communities, trying to be a good representative for all of these communities that matter. So yeah, you start to realize who's showing up in spaces. When you're working a whole lot, you realize you look around and not everybody works the way that some of us do.
Well, that's a really, really good point, because even me running around all these things that are happening in the community, you can see who's showing up and who's not, or who's showing up for a photo op and who's not. I used to be the selfie king until I became legislator for Ho-Chunk, and now I've really relaxed on that. But some people come for selfies and then leave, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is great. Bringing awareness to activities and events that we're doing. is fun. But the real work, is really behind the scenes, and it's important to see and recognize and support the people who are doing the work in that capacity.
I don't know if you want to, we got 3 minutes left, and I don't know if you want to go a little gray here, but I know I mentioned you're a mother,
Mhm.
an entrepreneur. Do you want to mention anything about your business? Because I think it's really exciting to know. Well, I think it's really exciting to know you don't sleep, obviously, but you also have a business too. You want to just touch on that before we let you go?
Yeah, sure. I mean, one of the things about being a legislator is I did have to leave my full-time job that I was working at NDSU. And so it provided the opportunity to have some time in the year to launch a dream of mine, which I launched Two Feathers Consulting. I call it Indigenous Infused consulting. So I do keynote speaking, breakout sessions, professional development, and then I do community cultural advising for individuals who are maybe looking to develop programs or implement activities in the areas of education, healthcare, and community engagement, just because those are the nets and the areas that I've worked in my career for the last 25 years. So taking these conversations, one of my favorite keynotes is actually Indigenous 101, all the things you didn't learn in K-12, really talking about, from Turtle Island to now, what has systematic genocide kind of looked like over time, and what does it still continue to look like? How can communities engage and ignite in healing and restoration in this relationship between settlers and the Indigenous people? So I really like that. And then I'm launching my own podcast to kind of be in a world of motivation. I like the lens of policy, making changes there. I like the lens of education, helping people to learn that. But then I also really thrive in areas to motivate our next generation through seeing and knowing our stories. Once we break through glass ceilings, I think it's extremely important that we leave glass crumbs for the next generation. So that once we're here and we make the journey and the pathway, that our next generations and relatives can really see that. And I think growing up, I really could have used some motivation in my life or some uplift or some hope. And so just trying to leave that in our communities as well. So that's kind of the, I guess, holistic view of who Heather is and all the areas that I'm really trying to actively make change.
Well, that's awesome. And I just want to let you know and remind you too, we have a huge audience in Wisconsin. Shoot out that website, and people all over Turtle Island can have your Two Feathers come and work with their organization.
Yep. So it's twofeathersllc.com. Two Feathers is spelled out. We're Indigenous owned, and it's really me. It's an effort to really create a legacy movement. Two Feathers is because I am a mom of two boys. And at the end of the day, when I'm really tired and feel frustrated and just like don't have the ambition to do things, I remember that there's next generations that are really relying on us to continue to show up. So I would love any support or any opportunities in the communities to just engage.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you so much. I know you're busy, and this is very important that we talk to our base and fire them up, and you do that automatically, and you do that on our show. So thank you so much, State Representative Heather Keeler.
Wow, wonderful interview from Robert Pilot with Minnesota State Representative Heather Keeler from District 4A. We're here with Nancy Beaulieu from from Minnesota MN 350, and we're here with Native Roots Radio presents Rock the Vote Native Style on Civic Media Network. We'll be right back with Representative Jamie Becker-Finn from Minnesota as well, and we will see you after the break. Stay tuned on Native Roots Radio presents Rock the Vote Native Style on the Civic Media Network.
Hey, Ogimaa, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN 350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN 350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
Minnesotans age 65 plus might qualify for Health Partners Minnesota Senior Health Options. The plan includes personal support, coverage for medical, prescription drugs, and dental, plus over 30 extra benefits. Eligibility information is available at healthpartners.com/oneplan. Health Partners is a health plan that contracts with both Medicare and the Minnesota Medical Assistance Medicaid program to provide benefits of both programs to enrollees. Enrollment in Health Partners depends on contract renewal.
J&S Bean Factory is a native-owned, community-supported, cozy, artsy coffee shop which offers roasted on-site beans, live music, and baked goods. Relax in the beautiful outside patio. City Pages writes, voted top 10 coffee shops. Tucked into a quiet corner of St. Paul's Highland Park neighborhood, this coffee shop roasts beans on-site from the best coffee-growing countries in the world. Located at 1518 Randolph Avenue, St. Paul. The good stuff.
The Native American Community Development Institutes make voting a tradition is a culturally specific, year-round, multi-generational approach to increase voter turnout and civic engagement. The fundamental principle of MVAT is that Native Americans are more likely to become politically active when engaged by peers and family. MVAT has created partnerships with local, statewide, and national efforts to increase turnout in BIPOC and other traditionally low turnout groups. Go to NACDI.org, NACDI.org to learn more.
Hi, I'm Jane Fonda, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio.
And we're back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and this is Robert Pilot.
Welcome back to Native Roots Radio presents Rock the Vote Native Style. I'm here with Nancy Beaulieu from MN350, and who's here as a treaty activist and voting rights activist, who's brought on the wonderful and absolutely amazing Representative Jamie Becker-Finn from Minnesota. Welcome, Jamie and Nancy. I will let you take over.
Right. Again, we have another relative running for re-election. Jamie Becker-Finn. She is a Leech Lake band member. She's an attorney, educator, and a small business owner. And she believes that regular people can work together to achieve positive change in our communities. And she also believes in hope and continuing to work towards a better future for everyone. And again, I want to remind you guys, voting is one way we build Native power, and why we show up and vote on November 8th for wonderful candidates, powerhouses like Jamie Becker-Finn. So welcome, Jamie.
Anine.
Yeah, you're out door knocking again.
Yeah, I'm in the car, but I warned Nancy before I got on my, it's cold enough now that when I'm out door knocking and keeping track of everything on my phone, it like sucks the juice out of my phone. So I think I got enough to hang on for the interview.
Right.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah, you're such a veteran at this. You were elected back in 2016. And so, I've, like I mentioned in the past, I've seen a couple of your videos and you really speak truth. And, this is just one more reason why we really need to encourage our relatives, our friends, and our neighbors to get out there and vote, because when we don't get to elevate people like yourself, and then we lose a place at the table. And so, I want you just to share with people how you plan to engage our communities, our Native communities, in this political process. Because thinking about the block party this weekend, we're not just registering people to vote. We're going to build power, and we want to do that in a good way. And we want to go to these meetings and support people like yourself. So, how would you encourage people to be a part of this political process?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely voting. And I think especially post redistricting, we kind of had this conversation in a more academic level about what it means with redistricting. But, we have a race in the congressional district in the 8th district where all of our northern tribes are in the same district. And we really could make an impact if folks showed up to vote. We've got a good ally, I think, in Jen Schultz, who's running. And I think, we've got the event going on in the Bemidji area this weekend. Reed Olson is a great candidate. We've got Alan Roy and Erica Bailey Johnson, who are both Native, running. And, Reed Reed too has really been, I think, an ally and a friend to a lot of Native folks, and especially like lower income folks. That's really been the heart of his work. So, they always talk about polling, and it's like I always question that, when the kind of higher ups within the party talk about polling, and I'm like, well, how many Native folks did you talk to? Because we don't typically get included in those polls. And so the way that we show up, when those numbers are really high in those precincts where we know our Native communities are located, that not only can that make a difference in who gets elected, but that sends the message that we are not to be trifled with, and that we have that political power, and that, the only way we show folks that we have that power is to wield it. And so that's super important, especially in our tribal communities, not just in, our urban Native community, but especially in our tribal communities.
Right. And I think it's really important, that we spread that message that we have to assert our right to exist. And how do we do that? And it's, as much as we don't want to be political, it is political. And even, the best thing I think that we have to stand on is defending our treaties and our right to assert those rights. And I think, moving forward, we see a lot of the candidates, our allies that are aligning with the treaty obligations, that are still very much alive today. And I think what's really important that we continue to show up, even though we've, in the past, many times our words have fallen on deaf ears, but we're learning how to play this game, Jamie, and people
right. Well, and
right.
when we win, or when they're in office because of us, they know it. And I think that's really important, because then, it's different, once you're, getting somebody elected is one thing, but then holding them accountable to the promises and the things they say they're going to do. If they know that the reason they're in office is our communities, that is a built-in mechanism for them to be more accountable to our communities long term. And so it's, people always say, oh, rural Minnesota, we're never going to win seats that hold our values anymore. And it's, it's like, bet against us, and I think the only way we prove them wrong is to show up and vote and prove them wrong. And that's really what I'm hoping to see, in I represent a suburban community now, mostly non-Native folks, but, certainly been engaged in my home community up in the Cass Lake Bemidji area, and, making sure all my cousins and all my relatives are getting out to vote. And that's what we need folks to do.
Right. And we have to understand that the Native population can make or break a campaign, but it's really up to us to show up and vote, because again, it is our voice that's being heard when we vote. And that's one way we build that power. And, moving past November 8th, one of the biggest takeaways we're going to get from that block party is, how do we show up after November 8th? How do we be engaged? Because again, we just don't vote and go home. We have to hold those candidates accountable, like you mentioned earlier. And I think, being a delegate to the DFL party, even though I don't like to identify as a DFLer, I'm actually a treaty person, and treaties are nonpartisan, so I show up as a treaty person. But what I would like people to know is, again, we define some of these things as long as we show up. And if we don't show up, nothing happens. And so,
right.
Yeah, I would hope that Jamie has time to come up and visit us on Saturday, but I know you're busy with your campaign. But it was wonderful to see you up here. What was that? What were we doing that
day? It was right after the Dobbs decision, when there's a pro-choice rally in the Bemidji area. I was able to coincide that with I think there's a powwow that weekend too. So I try to get back home with my kids so they can be in our community too. I think if my son will actually be up hunting this coming weekend, deer hunting. So, but I'll probably be down here between the campaign and my small business. But I hope a lot of folks show up, and I think I'm glad that they're doing the event, and I think it'll be good.
It will be good, and we're gonna actually help people get to the polls, and we're going to teach people to be civically engaged, because I think that's part of our personal growth as constituents, as people. And it's a good way to defend our treaties and be heard, and continue to learn play the world of politics and get better at it. Because, just 8 years ago, I had no clue to any of this. And I learn something new every time. And this is what I want to share with other people, that we do matter. We're still here, and we are going to build on the power.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, that's the power we each have as an individual to show up and vote.
Right. Is there anything you can do to help you, in these last few weeks of your campaign?
Honestly, like if you have any energy, let's help those candidates in our tribal communities up north. Like it makes my heart hurt that my home community is represented by someone who actively has disdain for my community. So let's put all our efforts into making sure Reed Olson and Erica Bailey Johnson and Alan Roy, that we show up for them.
Right. And we also have the Bemidji City Council. We have Emelie Rivera, we got Audrey Thayer. And then when you think about the county board, we got Sumners, we got Joe Gould, we got Mark Morrissey. They're not all Native, but you know what? They're about the same values that we hold. So, and I think that's why it's important that we know who these people are and we make time to vote. And again, you find your candidates, find out who they are, do your research, and make an informed voting decision, because it really does matter.
Yeah,
absolutely. Wonderful show, Nancy. Thank you, to you both, Nancy Beaulieu and Jamie Becker-Finn. You've been listening to Native Roots Radio presents Rock the Vote Native Style on Civic Media Network.
Hello, AM 950 listener. I know you. You take the